Hey you guys, welcome back to Mayfield Ranch. I'm Katie and today I'm going to give you a quick update on the garden. It's early August and the garden is looking wild. So come on along, check it out. So everything out here in the back animal garden is wild and overgrown. We need to trim up the grass, but we've got everything in the garden growing pretty well here. So on this side, all the peppers are producing. We've got just a bunch of peppers and they're loaded up, like all these plants are loaded with peppers. We've got this spaghetti squash growing up here. Some of the leaves need to be trimmed up. We've got some of the bush beans growing. This is our basil that's all going to seed. And some tomatoes that we can harvest out here today. So some of our tomato plants are doing better than others. We pulled out some of our Roma plants. There's our Malabar spinach. And this is just a look at our tomato plants growing up on this cattle panel trellis. And spaghetti squash just kind of hanging down from the other side. And we've also got some cantaloupe growing here that should be ready to harvest soon. Here's a cherry tomato that's growing up on that trellis. And we've got our Delicata squash there, but there's a bunch of weeds. It's not producing a ton of squash. And here's our rattlesnake beans, just still producing, and it's still got some flowers on it, which is really pretty. And that means it's going to give us more green beans. We really just can't have too many green beans. We'll take all we can get. So here's our harvest from the back animal garden, and we're not done. So we'll get this in, and we've got more to harvest. Here's a few more tomatoes out here in these containers. And let me show you over here. So we've got this lemon cucumber planted, and this one's growing pretty well. And some more tomatoes over here in this container that we need to harvest. And we've got some sweet potatoes sharing this container here with this tomato and a little sun sugar tomato. I thought I'd show you this. This is that volunteer tomato, and check it out. There's tomatoes on it, so I can harvest a couple of those. So here are some of the things we have growing in pots. This has this little pepper right here. We've got peppers on it, and this is called a red death spiral. So we're excited to give those a little taste test and see how they do. But everything out here is doing pretty well. In fact, some of our best tomato plants are actually in these pots and growing really well. So there's a ton of tomatoes I can take today off of these plants. So we'll get these harvested and take them in with us. There's some peppers here too, some of those purple Buena Mulata peppers. So we'll pick those and take them in with us. A couple more tomato plants in pots, and then some eggplant up here. So I'm going to grab one of these eggplant and a little bit more tomatoes on this one here. And then there's another lemon cucumber and cilantro. Well, let me show you this. So one neat thing is we've got strawberries. So I can pick a few strawberries. Here's our backyard garden. Everything's growing up over those cattle panel trellises and looking pretty good. And a couple things in pots here at the gate. Flowers still all over this butternut squash. So hopefully we'll get more butternut squash. The plant's still doing pretty well and just grown up over the trellis. And it's kind of touching the Armenian cucumbers. So they're all starting to mingle. Here's the other side of that raised garden bed. Now this is just full of peppers, and then the butternut squash on the left there growing up over the trellis. So you can see we've got peppers on them. They're not quite ripe yet, not quite ready to pick, but they should be shortly. So we'll be able to harvest all these peppers. There's that Armenian cucumber growing up where the butternut squash is. That's a ground cherry plant that we have there, so we've been harvesting some of that. Poblano peppers, and then even we have tomatoes growing on some of these plants that weren't doing so well. So we're getting some tomatoes. This is a cucumber that we have here, kind of growing up on that trellis, and there's also a handful of beans that volunteered and grew up there in that same spot. Behind this cucumber, we've got another super hot pepper. This one is a peach reaper. So there's a couple there, not quite ready to pick, but pretty soon. And then a bright spot here in our garden, we've got a few orange habanero plants. They were super tiny, but it does look like they're producing. and then these Chinese long beans. So we're going to get to harvest these today and try them out. So they're just starting to trellis up that cattle panel. A couple more tomatoes here in this pot that I still do not have stringed up here, but we'll get that going. And then a little sugar baby watermelon, and we checked on it. This watermelon is still looking okay, so hopefully we'll get at least one watermelon that we'll get to harvest and enjoy off this plant. A bunch more peppers here in this bed. On both of them, really, both of these beds have all kinds of peppers, so plenty to harvest here. And then I have this cucumber that we planted a little later. It's growing, so hopefully we'll get something off of that too. We planted it later, so we'll see. These are the pink banana squash, and they're starting to flower, so hopefully this will grow pretty well too. Little bees out here helping us pollinate. So we planted these a little bit later in season. Hopefully they'll produce for us. And we also have these watermelon that we started a little bit later in the season, and they're pretty tiny still, so they're just really getting started. We're excited to see if they'll produce for us. So we did these because our ground garden wasn't so great. It was full of weeds. So we just started some things a little bit later in our backyard garden. Couple tomato plants out here, and I also have a couple more lemon cucumber plants right here in this pot. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this really quick tour of the garden. I did want to show you, this is one of the long beans I didn't harvest because I want to save seeds. So I'm going to let this one get a lot bigger. You can see compared to the ones I harvested, they're a lot thinner. And this one is so much bigger than I'm leaving on the plant. So I'm hoping to let that fully mature so I can save seeds since this is an heirloom plant. And here is our harvest. So this is what I got this week out of the harvest. Just a bunch of peppers. So we just have so many peppers. So that's the bulk of what I'm harvesting. But it's looking pretty good, and we did get quite a bit of food this week, especially considering how much we harvested last week. And here it is after I get it all cleaned up, all laid out over the counter. So you can really see that we're producing a lot of food out in our garden that's saving us a ton of money if we were to go try to buy this at the grocery store. So if you're not already growing something out in your garden, why not? Grow right along with us. Look what you can produce. All right, you guys, leave us a comment below and let us know what you are looking forward to growing out in your garden if you're not already doing so. All right, we'll see you guys next week. I'm going to leave a link to the video to last week's harvest to the left here. So go ahead and click that, and you can see between the 2 weeks how much we're actually getting harvested out of our backyard garden. See you guys next week.